Hi guys, this is Lorena. Welcome to my channel. I'm an astrologer, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about how to read your child's birth chart, but also we're going to talk about the connection between astrology and psychology and how they relate to children's mental development. So if you're a parent or you're just curious about learning about children's astrology, then welcome. We're going to go through this video in sequential parts. So we're going to talk about the sequential brain development and how that relates to a child's birth chart and how you can read it, what parts of it are going to be relevant and at what ages. And yeah, hope that you're going to find some useful information for your little one. But the very first thing that we're going to talk about today is going to be the brain development. So the brain of children is going to be made out of three big main parts. The very first one is going to be the brainstem. So the brainstem, if we look back to the hand model, is kind of, you can imagine it at the base of the hand. It's also at the base of the brain. And it is responsible with the most primal and instinctual responses. So things like swallowing, breathing, things like the fight or flight response system are going to be correlated with this part of the brain. The brainstem is basically the primitive part of the brain that's responsible with survival. So it is developed since birth, and that is going to be the most important one in the first year of life. Then we're going to have the limbic system, which if we look at the hand model, is going to come right on top of the brainstem. So it's going to be right over here. The limbic system has multiple parts, but it is mostly concerning the emotional part of life. It has the desire for connection. It reflects the child's desire to feel loved, connected with. This is where the idea of safety equals connection becomes very important for the child as well. So being emotionally understood is going to be very important. Where they don't feel emotionally understood, they're going to have emotional outbursts, which relate back to the brainstem that creates those tantrums that we see. So the limbic system comes online at 1.5 years old. It does have the amygdala, which is an important component of it, which is like a trigger point. We're going to talk about that in a second. So the limbic system coming online at 1.5 years old is going to be responsible with emotional memories, emotional desires, the desire for connection and to be nurtured, in particular by the mother, but also in general to be nurtured by their environment. And the third component of the brain, which is going to be the prefrontal cortex, in the hand model, we can imagine it as a cap that comes right on top of the limbic system. So this is the brainstem. This would be the limbic system with the amygdala as part of the limbic system. And right on top of it comes the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is in development since birth, of course, but it does come fully online or does have a steep growth around the ages 5 to 7 years old, depending on the child, which is when the school age starts. And the prefrontal cortex is responsible with logical and critical thinking. So things like doing maths, understanding things from a critical and logical perspective rather than an emotional one. So this is the ages where you can start to reason with your children. You can give them actual motives that they can understand at a much deeper level. Of course, again, they can understand things even earlier than the age of 5, but this is where they finally kind of, you can relate to them on a different cognitive level. So yeah, these three developmental stages of the brain are also going to be correlated with how the birth chart comes online. So it's very important to see where your child is at from a brain development standpoint to understand which planets are going to be the most active and how your child is actually going to change over time too. So let's talk about children, particularly babies from the ages of 0 to 1 to 1.5 years old. Babies at this stage only have their brainstem developed, so their only concern is really survival. They just want to survive, they want to eat, they want to feel loved, they want to feel safe. So this is your most important duty as a parent. Now, in the child's birth chart, you can also identify some personality traits that they show ever since they are a baby. They're going to be shown by your ascendant, their ascendant sign. So for example, if you have a baby with a Libra ascendant, their instincts are going to be smiling all the time, to be a pleasurable presence. They will want to hang out with the mom or with the parent a lot, as Libra is all about that one-on-one connection. But Libra is also very bubbly, smiley, charismatic. So these are usually babies that are naturally a pleasure to have around. So the reason why the ascendant is tied to this developmental stage is because the ascendant inherently speaks about our instinctual responses. So the way that we act in life without thinking, how we present ourselves, and the kind of aura that we have about ourselves. So that was a Libra ascendant baby, for example. Another example is if you have a Capricorn ascendant baby, which seem very serious little ones. They kind of, they don't cry a lot, or if they cry, it's for a really serious reason. They have this like judgy energy about themselves. They want to be put on a structured routine. They like their environment to be very organized, just like you would imagine a Capricorn person. Another example is if you have a Leo ascendant baby. Leo is all about shining, it's all about entertaining, so they will find a lot of connection from making you laugh. So if you are a parent or a caregiver and you have such a baby, you want to make sure that you're showing them that you appreciate their presence and that their creative and entertaining energy does connect back to you. But yeah, correlate that with your baby's ascendant or your child's ascendant sign. Again, those are going to be the instinctual responses that will, your child will carry throughout their entire life. It's just they will become less and less aware of these tendencies as the more conscious parts of the charts develop. Awesome. Now, once the child turns around 1.5 years old, this is where the toddler stage starts. And as such, this is where the limbic system comes online more fully. And in the birth chart, we have a couple of planets that become very important. The very first one and the most obvious one is going to be the moon. And then we also have Venus and Mars. Now, the moon is going to be a placement that shows your children's emotional needs, but also and how your child processes feelings and emotions. So if you have a baby with the moon in Virgo, a child with the moon in Virgo wants routine, wants things to be serious, they want to be organized, and they also have this strong desire for service, to be helpful. So this is the stage where maybe you want to involve your baby into activities that like cooking or cleaning, doing small errands around the house that they can help with. So Virgo wants to feel like they are helpful, like they can provide using their analytical capabilities and general capabilities. And because the moon represents the mother as well and how the mother nurtures the child, they want to feel particularly appreciated and seen by the mother and to connect with the mother through these analytical or service-oriented activities. So again, cooking together, getting things organized together is very important. And also, of course, for children with the moon in Virgo, it's important not to be too hypercritical over them because it's likely that their emotional validation already correlates with their self-critical nature. So sometimes it's very easy to push on their own buttons, but that can have some negative consequences later on. So basically, the moon will represent a child's desire for emotional connection and validation. Another example, just to give another one, would be, let's give something a little bit more difficult, like the moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is all about depth, it's all about intensity, so that usually shows a very deep and intense connection with the mother, where the child feels the mother's feelings a lot. So there's a deep need for connection and a deep need for trust. So things like yelling or abandoning the child, leaving the child alone can be very hard on the child because they can feel these things very intensely, particularly where the mother is separated from them. But a very great benefit, again, is quality time together. Even things just like hugging each other can satisfy a Scorpio moon. But activities where, deep conversations and deep feelings are expressed are also meant to bond the two. So that's the moon. The moon ideally is needed to be understood by the mother because that's going to show, well, this is why my kid is crying. A kid with the moon in Leo will not cry as much if they feel like they can entertain you. A kid with the moon in Virgo is not going to cry as much or is not going to be as emotionally afflicted if they feel like they help you or if they feel helpful, and so on and so forth. The next planet that we talk about is going to be Venus and Mars. Now, as the child has their limbic system developed, they're also going to develop their desire to show their love, but also to show their anger, because they're discovering these big feelings. These big feelings are also connected to the energy of love and hate and anger and assertion. So Venus is going to show how your child will show their love and how they expect love, and then Mars will show how they assert themselves. Naturally, you can relate back to an adult's Venus and Mars interpretation to understand your child's, just tone them down for their own ages and how they can manifest at their age. So for example, a child with Venus in Cancer may really love having a doll that they can take care of and that they can nurture, just like a parent, right? But a child with Venus in Capricorn would show their love by doing acts of service, by doing things that are practical. And they would also expect love from others through practical gifts, through practical advice, through some serious work together that is age appropriate, of course. And then Mars will show how they act. So for example, children with Mars in Taurus, they act very carefully. They don't rush into things. They tend to take their time before they jump into a situation, because Taurus has that stable approach. But another example is if you have a child with Mars in Leo, they can have that little bit of an ego going on, and they're going to take action whenever they feel like they're going to get some recognition, where they're going to be preached for it. So yeah, these are some behaviors that you're going to notice ever since 1.5 years old. Now, I did mention earlier that the limbic system has something very important, and that is the amygdala. The amygdala is like a trigger system. If you're familiar with coding or IT, in coding, there's the structure, it's called the if statement. And an if statement basically has an expression, a logical expression that you would evaluate all the time. And you would say, is this true or is this false? And if it's true, you have something happening. If it's false, you have something else happening that you predefine. A child's amygdala, it's like an if statement where we have a consistent asking, the brain consistently asking itself, am I safe? 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 If my limbic system, if my brainstem, if my brain says I am safe, then I'm going to continue as normal. If it says I'm safe, I'm going to continue as normal. But if at any point the amygdala detects some input that says I'm not safe, then what it will do is it will trigger the prefrontal cortex. Even though it's not fully developed for children, they still have something developed, so no logical thinking available anymore, it just jumps up, and then the brainstem takes over the survival instincts, the fight or flight. So for example, to explain that in plain words, a child, if they don't have a lot of understanding of the world, and you take them to a supermarket and they're testing some beliefs, right? And they're testing the belief that if I don't have this toy, I'm gonna die. That's very extreme, but that's what their brain believes. And when you go into a supermarket and they go, I want this toy, and you go, sorry, you can't have it, we have enough toys at home or whatnot, the child just starts crying, throws a tantrum, drops on the ground, uncontrollable, crying. What do? What is happening, first of all? So what is happening is the child who doesn't have the prefrontal cortex very well developed, the child who doesn't have a lot of information about the world, has identified that in order for them to be safe in the world, you as a caregiver have to provide them with what they need or what they think they need. So when you tell them, sorry, no, their very first instinct is going to go, I've never encountered this situation before. And we're not talking about spoiled kids. We're talking about first case scenario when this happens. And they're just going to cry because they genuinely believe, well, I could die from this. And what you have to do as a caregiver when you have this situation happening is, first of all, to connect with the child in order to calm their amygdala. So basically to tell their amygdala, it's okay, you can calm down now. And the way to calm down in the amygdala is through emotional connection, validation, naming and taming as a technique. Look, you have tears streaming down your face. You're incredibly upset. You're so sad. You're so mad because you can't have your toy. So a lot of empathy, emotional connection, and understanding. We're not doing any of the, sorry, you have to get up your butt. You're not always going to get everything that you want, because the child doesn't have, first of all, they don't have the prefrontal cortex available when their amygdala has been triggered to understand what you're telling them. They're only able to connect on a limbic system or on a brainstem level. So you either shake them a little bit to get their brainstem to cool off, to get their body to cool off, and then you connect with the limbic system to give them the message, hey, you're safe, you're with me, come breathe with me, and so on and so forth. After you do this, the amygdala comes down, so it's back on track, and the prefrontal cortex that is in development can come back down, and you can explain to them why they can't have their toy. But the connection to astrology here is that a lot of times you can use the moon, Venus, and Mars in order to connect to the child and then calm them down more easily. So relating back to their emotional needs shown by the moon, to show them love with their Venus sign, and also to redirect them using Mars will be very helpful. Awesome. So let's move forwards to the age of 5 to 7 years old. At 5 to 7 years old, as I mentioned, the prefrontal cortex, the cap that comes on top of the limbic system in the brain, is getting a surge in development, and suddenly you can start to rationalize with kids. You can give them explanations and they can actually understand them. This is because alongside with the prefrontal cortex, the child also develops an ego and develops a more in-depth understanding of the world. Now, there's two important planets that come aligned in the birth chart here. So the very first one is going to be the sun. The sun, aka the child's zodiac sign. The child's zodiac sign is going to reflect how they want to be seen into the world. How do they want to be recognized? How do they want to be praised and preached? And that's why a lot of us really resonate with our zodiac signs, with our sun signs, because ever since our ego got developed, this is how we want it to be seen. So we're very proud about this energy. Like if you're a Capricorn sun, you're very proud about the fact that you're strict, that you're serious, that you're organized, that you're responsible. If you're a Cancer sun, you're very proud about the fact that you're emotional and nurturing and intuitive. Now, think of children when they come at the age of 5 to 7 years old, when their ego comes online. Think about their sun really going overdrive. And as a parent, particularly the father here, is going to want to make the child feel seen with their son's energy and to connect based on the sun's energy. So let's say that the child has a sun in Pisces. The parents, particularly the father, can start to praise the child's sensitivity, intuition, creativity, especially if, let's say, the father is a painter. They can start to paint together. Or if the mother is an intuitive, they can start to have conversations around intuition and how, let's say, empathy feels in the body or intuition feels in the body. So it's important to start to connect with your child on intellectual topics that relate to the sun's zodiac sign. Another example is, imagine that your child has a sun in Virgo. They start school and they start to tell everyone around the school, you're not organized, you don't have your stuff in your place. You know, your child's very frustrated with the disorganization in the classroom. A very first instinct would be to laugh, like, ha ha ha, you know, you're so strict, you're so funny. But it's important to praise, and to nurture the sun's zodiac sign, because this is how the child will get very confident in life. Because this is usually the sun's zodiac sign is literally what the child's having a lot of talent around. So making them feel proud about that talent, first of all, helps them nurture their natural talents, but also makes them feel psychologically more comfortable and accepted. So that's very important for later on when they're adults. But yeah, that's an example. For example, I'm a Leo sun. When I was around the age of 7, 8 years old, I started dancing classes. I don't do dancing anymore, but I am a singer. So performative arts have always made me feel very much like myself. So it was really good. My parents took me to dancing classes back then. And the second planet that comes online at the age of 5 to 7 years old is going to be Mercury. Now, Mercury is responsible with cognitive skills, of course, so naturally the prefrontal cortex deals with that as well. So it can be helpful for you as a parent to understand how the child will succeed in school. If they have a Mercury in Leo, Leo wants accomplishments, it wants to be celebrated. So having a school system that has achievements, grades, stuff like that could be really good for the kid. On the other hand, a kid with Mercury in Libra prefers a learning environment where everyone's friends with everyone, where there isn't a lot of competition, where people, where social skills or the topics like history or social stuff are being important. Kids with Mercury in Scorpio love to investigate. They have a very investigative mind, so they have an approach to learning that involves diving deep into the subject. Kids with Mercury in Taurus learn about things that they feel are practical. They're also a little bit slower learners, but they're more practical learners because they want to make sure that they understand the subject in depth before tackling it. So these are some things to consider. Awesome. The next developmental stage is not so much a psychological developmental stage as it is an astrological and spiritual one. And that is going to be around the age of 12 years old, 11 to 12 years old to be more specific. That is when the child encounters a Jupiter return, their very first Jupiter return. So that is when the Jupiter on the sky comes back at the natal position of their Jupiter in their natal chart. Now, understanding their Jupiter house, most importantly, but also zodiac sign, will help you as a parent understand what type of blessing is coming your child's way and what kind of blessing are they going to nurture moving forward in their life. So for example, I have a Jupiter in my 9th house, which is all about wisdom, learning, studying, being a good student basically, but also having a love for international travel. So when I was 12 years old, that was when I first started going to STEM related competitions like physics, chemistry, physics and maths more specifically. But that was also the very first time that I went international for a competition, for a dance competition. The 9th house also dealing with international themes. So now as an adult, some of the most important things for me are studying, learning continuously, but also I love traveling, and that's still an important part of my life. So another example would be if you have a kid with Jupiter in the 5th house, that could mean a lot of talent in the creative and performative department. So a child that is very entertaining, that knows how to put on a show, that they have a personality that's very fun and youthful to be around, that could be harvested. Or a child with a Jupiter in the 10th house could be a child that benefits a lot when they're in a position of authority, when they are the boss. So they could be taking on a lead role into something like being the head of the classroom or the school's president or something like that. The next stage is going to be at 14 to 15 years old. So puberty runs really intensely around that time. But it's also when Saturn opposes the natal Saturn in your child's chart. So Saturn is the planet of karma and discipline, maturity and authority. So Saturn reaching the opposition point is going to stimulate the natal Saturn, which means the child learns that they have to be responsible and they have to have autonomy in life. So this aspect is basically going to push your child to want to be more independent, to be more responsible. And again, the house that Saturn falls in is going to show where they have a lot of opportunity to grow in. So a child with Saturn and let's say the 2nd house would have a lot of lessons around finances, security, stability. So this could be a time where your child recognizes their own need for security and stability, and they may ask you to help them set up their own financial bank account. Stuff like that could happen. And finally, the last one that we're going to talk about is going to be the age of 18. So that's when your child's not really a child anymore. They are officially an adult, but to you, of course, they're still a child. So your support's still important. At 18 years old, there is the North Node return that is happening. The North Node represents a child's and a person's soul purpose. And at 18 years old, important decisions and lessons are happening in your child's life that are helping them go alongside the path of their soul purpose. So what you have to do basically is understand your North Node's house and zodiac sign to understand your child's soul purpose, so you can guide them around the lessons that come to them at this age. So for example, if your child has their North Node in the 9th house, when they hit 18, they might be considering going to college or university overseas. The 9th house is the house of international travel and being open to higher learning. If your child's thinking about dropping out of high school and not doing anything with their life, but their North Node is in the 9th house, they will go to university or college at some point, or they will have some sort of higher education happening. So it's better to guide them towards that sooner rather than later. And also another example, if your child has their North Node in the 10th house, North Node in the 10th house is a child that has to embrace the energy of authority, to be comfortable in them, being an authority figure, to be successful in life. So as a parent, you want to help your child overcome imposter syndrome and think big when it comes to their career prospects. But these are just some examples. Of course, it's very hard to go through all of them in this video. So that was pretty much everything. That was a quick rundown. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you're curious about children's astrology or you want to get certified to become an astrologer yourself, children's astrology is a module in my Astrologers Academy, Astrolorena Academy, so you can check that one below. Or if you want to book a reading, learn more about your child's chart or your own chart, again, my shop is linked right down below. I hope you're having an amazing day, an amazing week, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.